Am I the asshole for trying to prove if someone's boobs are fake? One of my 30 female close friends, male 30, went on a date with this girl. The next day, we all went to the gym and he was raving about her body, especially her chest. I took one good look at her and proceeded to tell my friend that her boobs were most definitely fake. I could tell right away that they were a bit too perfect to be real. My friend then asked if it's because I've seen her naked before in the locker room. I actually haven't, but that doesn't matter. He begs me to find out if they're fake or not, but I refuse. The problem is, now that I put the thought into his head, he doesn't want to date her anymore. A few days later, I was in the sauna at the gym when my friend's date, Sidra, walks in. I overhear her telling her friend how she went on this amazing first date and he asked her out on a second date, but out of nowhere calls and cancels and says he doesn't want to see her again. I scoff loudly and apologize for eavesdropping on their conversation. She then starts removing her towel while introducing herself to me. I got up to shake her hand, but lost my balance and fell right into her while my hands grabbed onto her chest to break my fall. And, well, they're most definitely real. I then tell my friend Jerry about what happened at the gym and he freaks out because he canceled his date based on my assumption. I feel really bad for making the assumption first, but Jerry is also at fault for canceling a date over such a simple matter. To find out what happens next, tune into Seinfeld, coming to Netflix October 1st.
Story time. About the time my friends and I got stuck in an elevator and had to crawl out of it after an hour and a half. So last week I had two friends staying over and about 1 a.m. we had to take my dog out to pee one last time before we went to bed. So we get out of my flat and we go inside the elevator. This is the elevator. Like, as you can see, it's not a very big elevator. This is it. So the elevator starts going down and then it drops a bit and then it stops working. The problem was none of us had our phones with us. We were going to take my dog out for a quick pee. We didn't think to take our phones, which was really, really stupid. So we're stuck in there, cramped with no cell phones. But luckily, there was an emergency button in the elevator. So we pressed it. Nothing happened. So then we started to panic a little bit. It was 1 a.m. No one was going to use the elevator. No one was going to hear us if we yelled. We had no cell phones. The emergency button wasn't working. So we thought we were going to be stuck in there all night. And again, we were 3 people. It was cramped. Like, we were literally like this and I'm holding my dog. But I decided to yell anyway, hoping that someone in the building would hear me. Nobody heard me. So then we tried the emergency button again. And this time it worked. So it's ringing and ringing and ringing. And then we hear, "Hello, this is Jackson Linden. How can we help you?" And we were like, "Oh my God, hi, we're stuck in an elevator. This is the address, da 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 da." And then we heard, "Hello, this is Jackson Linden. How can we help you?" They couldn't hear us. So the button wasn't working. So it started to get really, really hot at this point. Like, again, we were 3 people plus my dog who was panting. Like, there was no air. It was like a tiny, tiny box. But inside the elevator, there was another set of doors, like glass doors. So I decided to take my shoe off and try to cramp it in between those doors to try to get some air in. So luckily, I was able to do that. So we were like getting like a tiny bit of air. So we were all like against the door, like trying to get oxygen. So then we tried the emergency button again, and this time it worked. I mean, it rang like 20 times, but eventually it worked. So we were able to tell them my address and help was on the way. But then I realized something. Once the elevator person would come to my building, how would he get inside? I can't let him in. I can't buzz him in. I'm inside the elevator. Who's gonna buzz him in? So we panicked even more, and then we heard a man's voice saying, "Hello, I'm here to fix the elevator." He came and fixed the elevator, but he didn't actually fix it. He was just able to open the doors. So we had to crawl out from the top because there was like this much space for the next floor, which was really scary because if the elevator started moving, we would get crushed. But we got out, and the way that he was able to enter the building was by ringing all the flats and one flat hearing it and letting him in. It was 2:45 a.m. when we got out.
Children cases put me in mama bear mode, but especially this one. On June 4th, 2010, Kyron Horman, age 7, was last seen alive at his elementary school. The day had started out pretty regular for him. His dad, stepmom, younger sister, and him all got ready for the day. He was super excited to do his presentation on tree frogs, which was one of his favorite animals. This was said to be a huge event for the elementary school. They usually had about 400 visitors, and because of the volume of people coming in and out, they actually foregoed the signing in, signing out sheet. According to his stepmom, Terry, they toured around the science fair and she took a picture of him, which you see here. And then at about 8:45, almost 9 o'clock, he walked to his classroom. Terry then left and she said she went to Fred Meyer, which is like a grocery store. She said she needed to pick up medication because his younger sister, who was about 18 months old, was dealing with an ear infection or some ear pain. After this, she said she drove around on some country roads. That way she could try to console her daughter. And after that, she went home. Flash forward to later that afternoon, Kane, who is Kyron's father, and Terry, the stepmom, they went to the bus stop to pick him up. When they didn't see him get off the bus, they went and talked to the bus driver, who said he hadn't ridden the bus that day. So the two of them go to the school and talk with the office secretary. The teacher had confirmed that he was marked absent, but didn't report it to the office or the parents because Terry had told her that he had a doctor's appointment that day, so she assumed he stayed home after. But Terry would insist that the teacher was confused and that the appointment was for the following week. After this, the secretary calls 911, and they also call his biological mother, Desiree. Also something to note, they did find Kyron's backpack and jacket at the school. Now, all of this is taking place in Portland, Oregon, and Desiree lived about 200 or so miles away with her current husband, Tony. As soon as they find out that Kyron is missing, they hop in the car and they instantly drive over. The school's in a really rural area, and there's lots of trees and things, as you can see, so authorities instantly put out search parties. They also had K9 units at the scene as well, but they had no luck. Kyron's mother, Desiree, had said he was not a kid that would just go off and wander by himself. One of his biggest fears was actually not being able to get home if he was out somewhere. So authorities continue to search for Kyron, and they are talking with the family just to kind of get some background. So Desiree and Kane are the biological parents, and they had been married. Desiree found out he was having an affair while she was pregnant. So she moved out and filed for divorce, and actually the same day she moved out, his mistress moved in, which was Terry. Desiree had went through some health problems and was having to get treatment in Canada, so that's how Kyron ended up being with Kane and Terry. After getting some background, they asked all four parents to do a polygraph test. There would be multiple of these, and there's some interesting stuff with it. Three of the parents would actually pass their polygraphs, that being Kane, Desiree, and Desiree's husband, Tony. Terry, though, wouldn't pass. She was said to actually have also done multiple, all of which she failed. She blamed it on not being able to hear the person conducting the exam. Then another was that the examiner was rushing her, and the last being that she just up and left. So authorities started really looking into Terry because she was the last person to be with him before he disappeared. And while they could confirm that she was at Fred Meyer, like she said, that extra hour and a half that she was out driving, there was no confirmation on what she was doing. Also, people found it strange that that day she didn't take her normal red Mustang. She actually took their white F-150. They were able to confirm via cell phone pings that she was in this remote area called Sauvie Island. Authorities searched there, and again, no luck. Authorities continued to dig and take a look at Terry with the investigation, and some pretty alarming emails would come out. She had been emailing a friend saying that she had caught her husband cheating on her, and that she blamed all of this on Kyron and said that she hated him and she wished he was dead. So yeah, that could be coincidental, I guess, but then something else happened. A man named Rudy Sanchez came forward and said that Terry had hired him for some landscaping work, but when they got to talking, she asked if he or someone he knew would be willing to be hired for murder. And it wasn't for Kyron, it was actually for her husband. She had offered them $10,000, and of course he said no. When he told authorities this, they gave him a wire and had an undercover cop go with him to act like he was that friend who could have helped with this. But that did a whole lot of nothing, because basically he was like, if you don't pay me the $10,000, I'm gonna tell the cops you did this. And she was just like, nope, don't know what you're talking about, slam the door shut at the end. Because at this point, she was already on cops' radar. She had a high profile defense attorney, so she knew what she was doing. Well, Kane had no idea about any of this, didn't know Rudy existed, and when he found out, he took their daughter and he was escorted to a hotel. He then immediately filed for divorce and put in a restraining order. Then we have another person come into this story. Her name's Dee Dee. She's friends with Terry, and the day that he went missing, Dee Dee was at work. Now, she worked at a lavender nursery, and every day all of the employees would have lunch together. But this day they couldn't find her and they couldn't get a hold of her, but her vehicle was at the farm. She later goes on to tell investigators she was just doing some work and they just hadn't found her yet, and it was muddy, so she didn't have her phone on. But this was just a little odd to employees because she always had her phone. Also, people thought it was weird that she moved in with Terry as soon as Kane left the house. Desiree did try to file a civil suit against Terry to try to get some justice for her son. Unfortunately, though, they were getting some pushback as far as obtaining files for their case, and basically they didn't have much evidence to go off of for it, so Desiree decided to drop the charges. Terry to this day swears she had nothing to do with Kyron going missing. The only interview she's ever really done about this, though, since she got put into hot water, is a Dr. Phil special. But Desiree and the rest of his family are still seeking justice today.
This is 22-year-old Gabby Petito. She has been missing, and this case is ongoing. Let's make sure we can spread the word and talk about it, so hopefully she can be reunited with her family.
July 2nd, Gabby had returned to Florida, where she lived with her boyfriend after visiting family in New York, where she's from. Gabby and her boyfriend/fiance, Brian Laundrie, were planning on doing a cross-country road trip. The two were exploring all sorts of of national parks as they were making their way over to the West Coast. Gabby is very active on social media. Here's a few different pictures of her. They were documenting their trip and also had started a YouTube channel as well. And here's a quick timeline of kind of what's been going on. So as reported by KSL TV, August 12th through the 24th, they were in Utah. And on the 21st, Gabby's dad and mom had ordered them Uber Eats because they were in an area where they didn't have Wi-Fi. Their food was delivered in Salt Lake City, and this is the last time her dad would speak with Gabby. According to her parents, she did talk with them very frequently. They would FaceTime multiple times a week. It is also being reported that Gabby was last seen checking out of a hotel with Brian on the 24th. They had checked in there due to wildfires. And Gabby's mom had last spoken with her on the phone on the 24th of August. They were supposed to be heading to a national park in Wyoming. It is said that the van was spotted in that area, but a lot that we have to go on right now is from Gabby's Instagram because she was really active on there. And from my understanding, there has been no confirmation with a picture that they actually made it. It's just something to note. By the 27th though, her social media goes completely silent. On the 30th, her mom says that she does receive texts from her, but it's being reported that it cannot be confirmed or denied if this was Gabby. And since this is an ongoing investigation, of course, those details are not being released to the public at this time. Gabby's parents filed a missing persons report on September 11th. Brian also came back to Florida with the van, but no Gabby. And a quote directly from authorities is, "We take it, we process it for evidence, fingerprints, any evidentiary value that we think is possible. We are continuing to try to piece things together. The situation is obviously very fluid." Brian has not talked to authorities at all. They did try to go over there, and his parents said that he was not available. But since then, he has released a statement via his lawyer.
This is an extremely difficult time for both the Petito family and the Laundrie family. I understand that a search has been organized for Miss Petito in or near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. On behalf of the Laundrie family, it is our hope that the search for Miss Petito is successful and that Miss Petito is reunited with her family. On the advice of counsel, the Laundrie family is remaining in the background at this juncture and will have no further comment.
This is the missing persons poster that I wanted to share with y'all. It has all of her information, her height, weight, all of that stuff, and the phone number to call plus the case number. We need to make sure we do what we can so that way Gabby can be found safely and reunited with her family. I also would highly suggest listening to the Going West podcast. They did almost an hour episode on this case, so you can get deep details there as well. And also in the Going West podcast, they mentioned that the authorities took a pink envelope over to Brian's house. Not sure what that means. I didn't see any other updates when I looked online before recording this. If you know what that means, you can talk about it down below. If not, I will keep you guys updated. Definitely share, spread the word, so that way hopefully Gabby can be found ASAP and return safely.
Sherry Papini was abducted while on a run on November 2nd, 2016. She was released from her captors 22 days later. Here's what happened. That morning, it was said to be just a normal day. Her husband Keith went off to work and she had taken her kids to daycare, and when she got back, she decided to go for a run because she was training for a turkey trot. She had a text exchange with her husband at 10:47 a.m. asking if he was coming home for lunch that day. He said no, it was busy, and he had no reply. Her husband Keith stated that this was normal. Keith said he returned home at 5:51 p.m. and the house was completely quiet, which was out of the ordinary for them because they had 2 young children and they would always have their family snuggle time as soon as he got home. He assumed that the kids were outside, so he tracked her phone via Find My iPhone and he found it was up the road, more specifically at their mailboxes, which was about a mile away. This is a photo Keith took of her phone that he found, and he said this is exactly the shape it was in. Many people wonder if it's staged. He calls his mom to see if Sherry and the kids are over there, and they are not. Also keep in mind that when he was driving around looking for them, he was in her car. This had been there the whole day. He had taken his own car to work. After this, he called the daycare to see when the kids had been picked up, and he actually got told that they had not been picked up yet, which he found really alarming because at this point, it was later in the day. They normally got picked up by 4:45. So he called his mom back and told her to go get the kids. After this, he said he drove her around more, and then finally 2 hours later, he would call 911. People describe his demeanor as one who is talking about groceries or the weather versus someone whose wife is missing. And right away, him and his whole family, they insist that she had been abducted and did not run away. He also does chuckle at one point, but the argument there can be that maybe he just laughs when he's nervous or uncomfortable. Shortly after this, authorities arrive and they start searching for Sherry. Not that this really means anything, but he did take a polygraph test and passed. Prior to this, the Papini family were not big on social media, but after she went missing, he was on interviews left and right. During the search efforts, they conducted 20 search warrants because there was sex offenders and people involved in drugs in the area, but literally they would get no leads. They would end up having an anonymous donor who donated $50,000 and wanted to do a reverse ransom, basically saying, you bring Sherry back, we'll give you the money, no questions asked. Sheriff's Department wasn't about this, but the Papini family decided to go ahead and try to do this. Of course, they had no return. After this, they switched it to basically a regular reward for $100,000 and no Sherry. And then they bring this guy named Cameron Campbell into it, who was a hostage expert. There is a lot of sketchy stuff with him. He could have his own TikTok, but basically he said in interviews it was the same as the anonymous donor, that he saw them on the news and it just pulled at his heartstrings and he wanted to help. He actually never got paid for this. Then on Thanksgiving morning at 4:30 in the morning, she is spotted on the side of the road. A lady that found her after she had flagged her down said that she had her hands bound and she had also lost about 15% of her body weight. Sherry was a very petite person, so by the time she got weighed, she was in the 80s. She had injuries to suggest that she had been bound for a long time. She also had tons of bruises all over her body of different various ages. Her hair had been cut and she had a brand on her right shoulder. Authorities have never said what exactly this was. Sherry would be taken to the hospital and checked out for her injuries, but she would be able to go home that night, which I don't know, that seems a little odd. I thought she would stay at least overnight. If you have any insight, tell me. Due to her memory issues that she said she had, it took 11 months for us to be able to see a sketch of any kind. This is a sketch that was released. She said that these two females are the ones who abducted her and they kept their coverings on their face the entire time. She talked about how she got into an altercation with one of them and she ended up hitting their head on a toilet, and when that happened she got hurt and cut her foot, but there is no foot cut, but she does have all of these other injuries. Also, when they were doing their exam at the hospital, they found male DNA that was not her husband's and they could not identify who it was. Some people have said maybe this was a sex trafficking thing, but authorities are convinced that this is not the case. Also, it's questionable if there is information that we don't know, because they did put out that there was no immediate danger to the public, even though they had not caught the abductors. There are a lot of weird rabbit hole theories on this case. We did a podcast episode on this. You can check that out if you want to listen to more on that. And also, according to the Shasta County Sheriff's Department, they are no longer in charge of this case. It has been handed over to the FBI.
Convinced my best friend to break up with his physically disabled girlfriend. My best friend got into this relationship about a year ago. The girl was physically disabled, nothing obvious or showing unless she tried to walk, which is when you could tell there was something up. She couldn't do much, not even leave the house a lot due to her disability, but she seemed to make him happy. Happier than I'd ever seen him, actually. I told him that the relationship would be too hard for him and that he should break up with her. He wasn't keen, but I urged him, convinced him, told him about all the hardships her disability could bring up, reminded him how it annoyed him that he couldn't even go to see a movie with her or anything. I told him that he would not be enough for her, she'd need someone who could give her more support, and eventually he took my advice. It's been 3 weeks and he's heartbroken, the most miserable I've ever seen him, and completely regrets the decision. She's apparently heartbroken too, but won't take him back because she thinks he doesn't care a lot about her. He told her the reason for breaking up, on my advice. He's not angry or upset at me about it, as I was just trying to do the best for him. Truth is, I wasn't. I didn't think the relationship would be too hard on him. He was doing fine with her. The best for him would have been for him to stay and try to go the distance, quite honestly, as they seemed perfect together. I hated it. I was jealous that the crush he had on me seemed to have ended as he got with this particular girl. At first I didn't care. He'd had relationships before and they were never serious, and even if they were, it was obvious he still wanted me even through them. But this one got serious during the year and he seemed to no longer care about me. It's not that I wanted to date him. I don't feel like I wanted to date him at all. But I miss the crush he had on me, how he seemed to dote on me. He'd tell me how amazing I was, how I was the most beautiful girl in the world even when he was in other relationships. But that all stopped after he was with this other girl a while. He doted on her. I snapped when I saw him calling her the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen on a photo on her Facebook once. That's what he used to reserve for me, but he didn't say it to me anymore. Worst thing is, I'm not sure if I truly feel bad about it, or only feel bad waiting for his crush on me to come back when I'm not sure it will. My dog ate my brother and I let it happen. Believe me, it's not what it seems. When I was about 8 I dug holes all over the backyard for no reason. I remember my mom being pregnant, but I never saw him being brought home. I never met him. One day as I was digging I found a small wooden box. I opened it, expecting some treasure my imagination had led me to believe existed. But inside was a small humanoid beef jerky of a fetus. Thinking back on it, I now know that it was a miscarriage. As I put the box aside and looked around in the hole, I found a note that read, "I will always love you, my sweet child." As I turned around I saw my dog eating the thing inside of the box. I've never told my mom and I feel extremely guilty. Some background, I'm currently 18, so this was just 10 years ago. I lived in a very shady town really close to the Mexican border, so basically the health system over here is pretty much messed up. As far as I know, she didn't want to throw her child away in a bucket, as she put it. I know this because I have eavesdropped on her while she's talking with her friends. All I know is that it took a really hard toll on my mother when this child died. I know that she sometimes blames me for its death because I was an overdeveloped baby. I was born at nearly 11 months. If memory serves me right, I was like 20 days late. As a newborn, people thought I had already several months of life. It wasn't a C-section, so when I was born the natural way, I pretty much moved around her intestines and messed up her womb, I guess. Sometimes I catch her staring at a baby from other families and I can see the sorrow and the emotion reflected in her eyes, and I can't help but feel bad because I feel like I'm responsible that it was miscarried, and I also feel responsible for the fact that my dog had eaten it. From what I know, they told her that the child's heart was not beating. The doctors gave her meds and told her to go home, and then when she did pass it, to go back to the hospital, but she didn't. She didn't want them to throw away her child, and that's basically what I know. The box seemed to be crafted by my father, who's a carpenter. I dislike seeing parents with their severely disabled child. If it's something the doctors didn't catch until after the birth, or something that happened in an accident, then that's understandable. Hell, even children with Down syndrome live a very happy life. I've seen many shows about them living a fulfilling life. But I just don't understand knowingly having a child with a severe disability that will grow up having to be took care of 24/7. A lady came into the store with a child with a feeding tube and was confined to a wheelchair. He just sat there moaning or screaming, and drooling as if he was in pain the entire time. Couldn't move hardly at all. I felt so bad for both him and the mom. They both looked stressed. The child will never find love, or experience life at all for that matter, and I just don't see myself carrying a child like that to full term. I'm sorry, I killed someone in a brutal way. This was back at 1995. I was hanging out at my friend's place. We were drinking vodka, tequila and all the good drinks. We decided to go to my place. We were sloppy drunk, and as we were walking to my home, which is a few blocks from his, my friend ended up taking a dump at someone's backyard. We booked it to my house. Finally we got there and entered it. We barely got to my room of how drunk we were. He got onto my bed and I passed out on the floor. I woke up to my friend shaking me and whispering as quiet as he could, "Someone's in the house." We heard a loud thud downstairs. However, one thing came to my mind. I snuck into my dad's room and picked up a Chiappa 1887 mare's leg pistol. It was basically like a lever-action rifle, just a shorter version. I loaded it. It had 3 bullets inside of it. I walked down the stairs wearing only my PJs. I got to the living room area, that connected with the kitchen and led to my storage closet. It was wide open and I could see a black figure digging through our stuff. Many things cruised my mind, but the main ones were, should I kill him, or not? I pushed the lever down and then pulled it up. The noise caused the man to turn around. As soon as he turned around, I pulled the trigger. He fell to the floor yelling in pain as his stomach was bleeding. That's when he pulled out a gun. I think it was a Beretta M9A3. Being the panicked teen I was, I stepped on his gun, pinning it down to the floor with my foot. I pushed the lever down and up once more, put the gun under his chin, the gun was facing upwards, and fired. Blood splattered on the ceiling, brain parts were on the carpet. His face was turned to smush. But he was shaking, so I did the lever action for the 3rd time, ejecting the used shell. I shoved it inside his mouth and fired my 3rd and last shot. It made a hole in the back area of his neck. I let go of the gun. I watched as his head slid down the barrel and the whole shotgun. It was bloody and gross. A spark of realization came in, to help me see what I have done. I got down on my knees and started crying out loud. Not shortly after, the police came. The guy had a long criminal record of abuse, murder and kidnapping. I got 6 months of community service. And about my friend, you may wonder? He was hiding in my closet upstairs. He is the one who called the cops. Pet fees in apartments are BS. Children are 10 times worse. I am infuriated that I have to pay $250 to have a cat that does nothing all day and is silent, while my next door neighbors have a child that screams and cries all the time and bangs on the walls. My lease says that if there's excessive meowing it constitutes a noise violation and I can be evicted for it. Does the same apply for a screaming child? I doubt it. They can't control if their kid cries. You think I can control a cat who wants to meow? I'm not criticizing anyone who has kids in an apartment. I understand that it might be the only option for a family. I'm just mad that I have to pay a fee for my cat who is in no way a disturbance. We need to acknowledge ugly people exist, rather than saying things like all people are beautiful. Ugly people exist and usually, know they're ugly. As do average people. Fake platitudes about how certain people are beautiful in their own special way don't really benefit anyone. The goal should be to make it okay to be ugly, and be proud of yourself regardless. And to treat ugly people with the same kindness and respect as beautiful or average people rather than whatever it is we're currently doing. On the contrary, it's degrading, in the same way special needs is degrading. Money doesn't buy happiness, it buys financial security, which enables happiness. First off, Let me be absolutely clear, this stood through way before the pandemic existed. Now that we got that out of the way, I'm sick of hearing money won't make you happy. Especially when it's said to people who are in poverty. You have a lot of nerve telling someone who is legitimately in poverty, money won't make you happy. You want to say that to someone who can afford to live comfortably, meaning being a millionaire won't make you happy, fine. But how dare you say that to someone who can't even afford monthly rent, food, and utilities? Go see Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and stop telling less privileged people than you that they don't need money to be happy. Why the hell do you think so many homeless people are addicts? You can't be happy in those circumstances. You have lost your goddamn minds if you think you don't need basic life necessities and securities to be able to be happy. Of course, basic survival is nothing to be too happy about, that's not enough to be a good life. But it certainly allows you to do things that will make you happy. I regret getting married and it hasn't even been a year. I didn't know when I signed the contract that I would be signing up for most of the chores, signing away my individuality in the eyes of most of our acquaintances and signing off the call list for girls' night out. It's been hard to convince my friends that I am still the same person as I was before and am not, in fact, barefoot, pregnant and chained to the stove. On that same note, I'm tired of everyone asking when the baby is coming. I've already run out of witty and clever responses. Even more to my annoyance, I only became a respectable woman in a lot of people's eyes since I've been married, which kind of hits my feminist values right in the feels. My partner has basically worn the same sweatpants and old t-shirt, team building exercise 99, since our wedding day. I don't mean to even bring him into this because I do love him and it's not his fault I regret being married, but you know, I kind of saw things going differently in my head. I don't really know if I'm up to this for the rest of my life. It's too soon to quit. But at the same time I kind of feel like I've made a horrible mistake. I regretfully ghosted a guy, saw his fat girlfriend and now I want him. I will admit that I messed up. There is no excuse for my behavior. I had been talking with a guy and we were into each other. He wanted to meet up with me and I wanted to meet up with him. But I allowed my own insecurities about my weight, anxiety and low self-esteem to get the best of me and I ghosted him. We have reconnected, but as friends. Just some small, casual talk here and there every few weeks or so. I saw a tag post with him and his girlfriend and my jaw hit the floor. I became jealous, but also regretful. All of the time I wasted on being apart from him seems to be for nothing, because his girlfriend is just as fat or fatter than me. It makes me mad because in the midst of the ghosting, I started working out, trying to eat better and seeing a therapist for my emotional eating and binge eating. I do want to get healthy for myself, but I know that men are visual when it comes to romantic interest in women. I'm not complaining, it is what it is. Even though he is in a relationship, I do want to make a play for him. I don't know if I would go as far as to insutiate myself into their relationship to break them up. But if their relationship does not work, I wanted to be the first to be right there to let him know that I still have romantic feelings for him and I'm willing to work hard as long as it takes to regain his trust and love. I know it will be difficult because I did ghost him, but I am willing and I am in it for the long haul.
So when I tell you guys stuff, it's all based on true events. I don't make stuff up for clout or views or likes. It's the honest truth. It's what is happening in my life, okay? And I'm gonna be honest with you, and what I'm about to tell you, you guys are gonna find it really hard to believe. Really hard to believe. I've been a peeping Tom. I've been peeping through my peephole. But only for good reason. I've been smelling something. It's a blessing and a curse. And I've also been hearing a lot of shit while I'm trying to watch Grey's Anatomy. These hormones are literally making me fucking nuts. Things that never would have bothered me before, they bother me now. But honestly, it's not like over stupid things, okay? So my neighbor across the hallway, okay, I got a very disturbing knock on my door yesterday, asking if I know whose child this was, okay? It was a little 2-year-old little girl, okay? She was barely 2. She had a shirt and a freaking diaper on and no shoes, okay? Come to find out, the neighbors across the hall didn't even know she escaped. Didn't know how she could have got out of the apartment. Didn't even notice she was gone. Not the first time, but the second time somebody has found her outside wandering the road. Then their other 3 children were causing commotion right outside my door. So I peeped in the peephole to find their puppy peeing right in front of my door. And I'm positive it's not the first time this has happened because the hallway reeks of piss. So I went full-blown out Karen and I got this through my peephole when they came back in. And just like the 2-year-old little girl, they didn't care about that pea spot their dog had made in front of my door. So if you're ever considering getting an apartment, please know your risks. Yeah.